It was supposed to be a calm dinner. My sister, Grace, 8 months pregnant, had just moved into their new house with her husband, Daniel. They invited us, me, Dad, and Mom, for a simple family meal. That's how Grace phrased it in her text. Simple. But nothing's ever simple in our family, especially not when it comes to money or expectations. I stood there, frozen, in the middle of the dining room as my father launched a kitchen chair across the room. It missed Grace by inches, crashing against the wall behind her and splintering into 3 jagged pieces. Daniel jumped up to shield her, arms wide like a human barricade. And Grace, her hands instinctively cradling her belly, didn't even scream. She just stared at Dad. I'll never forget the sound of my mom gasping behind me. Or the silence that followed. The kind of silence that only comes after something irreversible has been done. And all I could think was, I caused this. Let me back up. I'm the youngest. The late mistake. As Dad used to joke after a few beers. My sister is 9 years older than me and was basically a second mom while I grew up. She taught me how to ride a bike, helped with my science projects, even snuck me snacks when I got grounded. But ever since I turned 26, things changed. I lost my job. Then my apartment. Moved back in with our parents. Grace offered to help in little ways. She brought over groceries, slipped me $20 here and there. But once she married Daniel, she wasn't around as much. And when she got pregnant, I got the message loud and clear. Her life had moved on. Still, when I heard they were buying a house, I felt this pang. Not jealousy, exactly. More like desperation. A part of me wanted to be part of something stable. Something that didn't feel like my life was falling apart. So I asked her, jokingly at first, if she and Daniel could add me to the mortgage. Just to help me get on my feet, I said. So I have something to build on. Grace blinked, laughed awkwardly. That's not really how it works, Josh. I pressed again the next week. This time more seriously. I told her I needed a way out, something to ground me. That she owed me, in some way, for all the years I watched her live this perfect life while mine spiraled. That's when the tension began. Calls went unanswered. Messages left unread. And then came the dinner. Dad was the one who pushed for it. We need to talk about family, he said. You've always been there for her, and it's time she does the same. I didn't realize he was carrying his own resentment. He didn't like Daniel. Thought he was smug. Thought Grace had become too independent. The night started off okay. Grace cooked her famous lemon pasta, Daniel made fresh bread, and everyone sat around the table trying to act normal. Except you could feel it, the tightness in the air. Like everyone was holding their breath. It started when Dad asked too casually, So, Grace, any updates on that paperwork Josh asked about? Grace froze mid-bite. Daniel reached for his water. I already told him, she said quietly. It's not going to happen. The mortgage is between me and my husband. That's not a family matter. Dad's jaw tightened. You mean to tell me your own brother is drowning, and you won't throw him a rope? Grace inhaled slowly, like she'd practiced this in her head a dozen times. I love Josh. But enabling someone isn't helping them. We've done what we can. My cheeks burned. She made it sound like I was some addict, some stray they'd taken in out of pity. Dad slammed his fist on the table, rattling the dishes. You ungrateful little girl. After everything your mother and I gave you. Daniel cut in, his voice calm but firm. Please don't raise your voice. Grace is pregnant. Don't you tell me how to talk to my own daughter. Dad snapped. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but it was too late. Dad stood up so fast his chair screeched backward. You're just like your mother. He spat at Grace, voice shaking. Selfish. Cold. And then it happened. He grabbed the nearest chair and hurled it across the room. The sound of it hitting the wall was deafening. Mom screamed. Daniel yelled something. Grace flinched. And I just stood there. I should have stopped him. Should have stepped between them. But my legs felt like concrete. My breath was trapped somewhere in my chest. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. All of this, every tense word, every glare, every ounce of rage, it wasn't about a house. Or a mortgage. It was about me. I lit the fuse. And now I had to choose, keep burning everything down, or walk away. After that chair flew across the room, everything changed. But the truth is, things had already been unraveling long before that night. That moment was just the explosion. The slow burn had been simmering for months, maybe even years. When I moved back in with my parents, I told myself it was temporary. I had just gotten laid off from my job at the auto parts warehouse, and my lease was up. I had no savings, no backup plan. At 26, I thought I'd be further along. But life doesn't always play by the timeline you imagine when you're a kid. Mom was the one who said yes to me coming back home. She always says yes. Dad barely looked at me when I rolled my suitcase back into my childhood bedroom. And Grace? She sent me a polite text. Let me know if you need anything. Which, I guess, was her way of offering help without getting involved. For the first few weeks, I was in denial. I told myself I was just regrouping. Looking for work. Applying for jobs online while scrolling Reddit and watching Netflix in the basement. I avoided eye contact with Dad. Avoided mirrors, too. Mom left meals at my door like I was a sick patient. Dad made little comments under his breath, things like, "Man should pay his own bills," or, "Living off handouts turns you soft." I tried to ignore it. But it stuck. Then Grace came over one weekend. She brought lasagna and a stack of groceries. She smiled, asked how I was holding up, told me she and Daniel were looking at houses. "Oh," I said, trying to sound supportive. "That's awesome." She beamed. "Yeah, something with a backyard. Room for the baby." She touched her belly, barely showing at the time. "We've been saving like crazy. Daniel's got that tech bonus coming in, so fingers crossed." Something in me twisted. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I remembered when Grace used to sneak into my room with bowls of popcorn and let me stay up late to watch movies. Back then, she felt like my person, my protector. But now she had someone else to protect. A husband. A baby. A life I wasn't part of. It was a stupid idea, really. But it came to me while looking at mortgage listings online. I'd read that having a co-signer or being added to someone's mortgage could help build credit. Maybe it wasn't even about the house. Maybe I just wanted to be tethered to something again. Something that made me feel real. Useful. So I asked. I waited until Grace came by alone, just her and a bag of baby clothes she'd picked up from a neighbor. I helped her carry them in, made us tea, and sat across from her on the porch. "I've been thinking," I said. "You and Daniel buying that house, would you ever consider adding me to the mortgage?" Her face didn't change. Not at first. She sipped her tea. "What do you mean?" "Like maybe we could work something out. I live in the house, help with payments, build some equity too. It could help me get back on my feet." She set her cup down. "Josh, I'm not asking for a handout," I said quickly. "Just a chance. A way to restart." There was a long pause. "I don't think that's a good idea." I laughed, trying to brush off the sting. "Why not? You guys have the space." "It's not about space," she said gently. "It's a legal thing. The mortgage is between me and Daniel. We've planned it around our incomes, our future. It wouldn't be appropriate to complicate that." Appropriate. That word clanged around in my head for days. I didn't tell Dad right away. But he found out. I think he overheard a phone call, or maybe he just knew me well enough to sense the defeat on my face. "She shut you down?" he asked one night, halfway through his second beer. I didn't answer. "She forgets who helped raise her," he muttered. "That girl used to cry when you scraped your knee. Now she's too good to share a roof." I knew it wasn't helpful, but I didn't stop him. Part of me needed someone to take my side, even if it was just in words. Things got worse from there. Mom started tiptoeing around everyone. Grace stopped coming by. When she did, it was quick visits, and Daniel was always with her. They never came inside. We talked on the porch like strangers with polite smiles and unsaid grievances. I tried applying for jobs, anything at that point, but the rejection emails piled up. Fast food joints, retail stores, data entry gigs. Either I was overqualified, underqualified, or too much of a gap on my resume. Every "thank you for applying" felt like another door slamming in my face. One night, I was scrolling aimlessly when I saw a post on Grace's social media. A photo of their new house, white shutters, green lawn, baby swing already installed on the porch. The caption, "Our forever home. Can't wait to bring baby out here." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. That's when I called Dad. Told him I needed to talk. "I just don't get it," I told him, sitting in the garage while he smoked. "Why is it so hard for her to help me?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because she's forgotten where she came from. Thinks she's above family now." I nodded, soaking it in like gospel. "You deserve better," he added. "You deserve a home too." That line stuck. I replayed it over and over. I deserve a home too. So when Dad suggested we all sit down, have a family dinner and clear the air, I agreed. I even helped set the table, vacuumed the floors, picked up flowers from the corner store. I wanted to believe it could fix something. That if we just talked, it would click for Grace. She'd see how lost I was. How much I needed this. But Grace came guarded. Her hands resting on her belly like armor. Daniel at her side, cool and quiet. They were a unit, a wall I couldn't breach. And when Dad brought up the mortgage, casually at first, I saw Grace stiffen. She looked at me, then at him. Said it wasn't going to happen. Then Dad exploded. It's strange how memory works. I remember the heat rising in my neck. The way the lasagna smelled right before things went south. The sound of Dad's voice, trembling with fury. Grace's eyes, glassy but unflinching. Daniel's hand on her shoulder, tightening. And then the chair. When it hit the wall, time broke into pieces. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My stomach dropped into my shoes. Because it wasn't just the violence. It was the realization that I had let it build to this. I thought I was asking for help. But maybe I was demanding a sacrifice. And Grace? She wasn't the villain. She was someone setting a boundary, and I hadn't listened. In the silence that followed, I watched Daniel help her up. Watched her walk out, one hand on her belly, the other clinging to her husband's sleeve. I stood in the ruins of that dinner, surrounded by splinters and shame. And for the first time in a long time, I knew something had to change. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, uneven circles, making this dull, ticking sound that echoed like a metronome for regret. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grace's face, frozen in that moment of shock. I saw Dad's eyes, wild and unrecognizable. I heard the wood of the chair splintering against the wall like it was happening over and over again. The guilt didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly. At first, I was angry, at Grace, at Daniel, at the whole situation. I told myself they were the selfish ones. That they had abandoned me, shut me out. But the longer I sat with it, the harder that lie was to hold on to. Deep down I knew. I knew I had crossed a line. I knew I had expected too much from people who owed me nothing. And worst of all, I had let it escalate. I had stood by and let my father, our father, turn his frustration into violence. I woke up late the next morning. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. "Don't worry about last night. Give it time." I didn't reply. I didn't have the words. For the next few days, the house was silent. Dad didn't speak to me. Mom pretended nothing had happened. She moved through the house like a ghost, vacuuming rooms no one sat in, wiping counters that didn't need cleaning. I think that's how she copes, with silence and chores. But I couldn't pretend. I started going on long walks, leaving the house for hours just to be alone with my thoughts. I passed neighborhoods with neat lawns and colorful shutters, families playing with kids in driveways. I imagined Grace and Daniel in one of those houses, laughing as they set up a crib or painted a nursery. I imagined myself outside the window, watching, wishing, knowing I didn't belong. And then, one afternoon, while I was out walking, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, some thread of responsibility I hadn't quite destroyed, made me pick up. "Hey," I said, my voice dry. There was a pause. Then he said, "We're okay. The baby's okay." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Grace is still shaken," he continued. "She's resting. But I wanted to talk to you." I braced myself. "You need to understand something," he said. "This isn't about the mortgage. Or the house. Or even you living with your parents. This is about boundaries. About trust. You crossed the line, Josh. And your dad, he did something unforgivable. But you let it get there." He wasn't yelling. He wasn't accusing. But every word hit like a punch to the gut. "I know," I said softly. "I know I messed up." There was another pause. "Then do something about it." After we hung up, I walked until the sun went down. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was the victim in this story. I needed to stop running in circles. Stop blaming Grace for having a life that I couldn't build for myself. That night, I sat down with Mom and Dad at the kitchen table. It was the first time we'd all been in the same room since the dinner. "I'm moving out," I said. Mom looked up, startled. "Josh, you don't have to." "I do," I interrupted gently. "I've been using this house as a crutch. I've been using both of you as a crutch. It's not healthy. And it's not fair." Dad didn't say a word. He stared at the table like it owed him something. "I don't know where I'm going yet," I continued. "But I need to go." Mom started crying. Quietly, the way she always did, shoulders trembling, head bowed. I stood up, went to my room, and started packing. It took me 2 days to get everything sorted. I sold some stuff online, packed the rest into 2 duffel bags. I didn't own much. Just enough to remind me who I used to be. I found a room for rent about 30 minutes away. A guy named Jared who needed help covering his lease. It wasn't glamorous, peeling paint, creaky floors, but it was mine. Or at least it wasn't my parents'. On my first night there, I sat on the mattress on the floor and stared at the ceiling. It was quiet. No ticking fan. No footsteps upstairs. Just silence. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I got a job at a hardware store the following week. It wasn't what I'd gone to school for. It wasn't what I'd dreamed of. But it was something. A paycheck. A start. I kept my head down. Worked double shifts when I could. Saved every extra dollar. I didn't call Grace. I figured she needed space. But one night, about 3 weeks after I moved out, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her. It wasn't long. Just a few lines, written in her careful, round handwriting. "I don't hate you," it said. "I never did. I was angry. Hurt. Scared. But I've seen the changes. Daniel told me you moved out. Got a job. I'm proud of you, even if I haven't said it out loud. I hope one day we can talk again. Love, Grace." I read it 3 times. Folded it. Unfolded it. Read it again. And then I cried. I cried for the first time in months. Maybe years. Not from shame, not from self-pity. But from something else. Something lighter. Hope. A few days later, I got a text from Daniel. "We're having a small get-together this weekend. You're welcome to come." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat with it. Thought about everything that had led to this moment. The mistakes. The silence. The apology I still hadn't said. And then I texted back. I'd like that. Thank you. The day of the get-together, I showed up with a plant. It was small, cheap, and slightly lopsided. But it felt right. A symbol of growth. Grace opened the door. She looked tired, but radiant. Motherhood suited her in a way that made my chest ache. Hey, I said. She smiled. Hey. We hugged. It was awkward at first. Then it wasn't. Inside, Daniel was grilling. A few friends stood around chatting. It was casual. Warm. I sat next to Grace on the patio, watching the sun dip behind the trees. I'm sorry, I said quietly. For everything. She nodded. Thank you. We didn't need to say more. Later that evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Grace handed me a small envelope. I opened it in the car. Inside was a key. And a note. This isn't for the house. It read. It's for the shed out back. We're turning it into a workspace. If you ever want to help, it's yours. Not because you need it, but because we believe in you. I held the key in my hand and just sat there, staring at it. It wasn't a mortgage. It wasn't ownership. It was trust. And that was worth more than any name on any deed. I stared at the key in my hand for a long time. It wasn't anything special, just a plain silver key on a simple ring. No tag, no ribbon, no dramatic flourish. But it felt heavier than anything I'd held in years. Not because of its size or weight, but because of what it meant. After everything, after the arguments, the silence, the shame, I was sitting in my sister's kitchen again. Grace had just handed it to me like it was nothing. But I knew it wasn't nothing. It was forgiveness. It was trust. It's for the shed, she said, her voice quiet but steady. Daniel and I are turning it into a little workspace. Figured you might want to help. I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. So I just smiled. A small, grateful smile. The kind that comes when you realize someone still sees the good in you, even after you've given them every reason not to. We didn't talk about the past that night. Not in detail, anyway. There was no need to rehash the worst parts. The look in her eyes said enough. She remembered everything, and she still chose to open the door again. That was enough. Over the next few weeks, I started going over on weekends to help. At first, it was just light work, cleaning out the shed, hauling away boxes of old junk, sweeping up cobwebs. Daniel showed me how to reframe a door. Grace brought us lemonade in mason jars. It almost felt like we were kids again, playing house in the backyard, except now everything was real. One Sunday afternoon, as I was sanding down a warped window frame, Grace stepped inside the shed and leaned against the doorway. You know, she said, I didn't think I'd ever be able to trust you again. I paused, looking up. But watching you these past few months, I see it. The change. You're showing up. You're not just asking for things, you're doing the work. I swallowed hard. I was lost, Grace. I think I still am, sometimes. She nodded. We all are. But at least you're trying. That's more than most. We didn't say anything else for a while. Just worked in comfortable silence, the way siblings sometimes can when words aren't necessary. That little shed started to take shape. We painted the walls a soft gray-blue, installed shelves, even found an old desk that Daniel helped me refurbish. Grace hung up a corkboard and pinned little notes to it, reminders, sketches, to-do lists. But she left a corner empty. That's your space, she told me. Do what you want with it. I didn't know what to do with that kind of freedom at first. I'd spent so long waiting for someone to tell me what to do, where to go, who to be. But now, slowly, I was starting to find out for myself. I filled that corner with notes and scribbles, ideas for projects, things I wanted to learn. I wrote a list titled, Things I've Never Tried, and started checking them off. Wood carving. Learning Excel. Cooking something without a microwave. It was small, but it mattered. One night, I was packing up tools when Grace brought out a box. What's this? I asked. She smiled. Old photo albums. Thought we could go through them. We sat on the back porch, flipping through pages of birthdays, holidays, backyard barbecues. There was one photo of me at 8 years old, holding a stick like a sword while Grace wore a paper crown. "You always thought you were my knight," she laughed. "I guess I dropped the sword somewhere along the way." She looked at me. "No. You just had to find a new way to fight." That night, I lay in bed thinking about that photo. About how easy it is to get lost in who you were, or who people expected you to be. I'd spent so much time chasing validation, begging for space in other people's lives, I forgot I could make space for myself. I wasn't on the mortgage. My name wasn't on any deed. But I had a key. And that meant more than any piece of paper ever could. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Grace called me out to the shed. "I want to show you something," she said. She led me to the corner I'd claimed, the corkboard full of my messy ideas and half-finished dreams. She pointed to a new addition, a small wooden plaque, neatly carved. It read, "Josh's Corner, built with heart." I stared at it stunned. My throat tightened. "You made this?" She nodded. "Daniel helped. We thought it was time you had something with your name on it." I ran my fingers over the grooves of the letters. They weren't perfect. The lines wobbled in places. But it was real. Tangible.